So in this video, I thought I would talk about ceremonies. Ceremonies that have been happening around here, ceremonies that I've had a chance to participate in, and what all that means. I think in my last video I talked a little bit, I started hinting at some things of like Yoni steam, women's ritual, sweat lodge. I don't know if I mentioned plant medicine, and I also talked about shamans and medicine women. And I think for me, before, if I'd heard some of these terms, especially like shaman and medicine woman, I would have thought, oh, that's like a little bit more mystical, and yeah, like definitely interested in it, but maybe a little bit skeptical. But I think as I've gotten deeper on my own spiritual journey, understanding of the world, understanding of nature, I realize how important these individuals are for us to have these resources of people who are connected holistically, to help us in different ways. And maybe it's just the title shaman, medicine woman, they sound really mystical, but if you said like Ayurvedic doctor, you'd be like, oh yeah, it sounds legit, right? And so yeah, being here, I've had a chance to participate in a lot of different ceremonies. The first one that I participated in that day was really interesting. I did a women's ceremony with a medicine woman, and that had a few parts. It had I think it started with some, we had like a one-on-one consult. She had this like beautiful altar set up she had some different plants, and she had some pictures and idols that represented femininity and wombs, and some of them were from, I think, maybe some from Costa Rican indigenous cultures, some from African cultures, some from Guatemala. She's trained in Guatemala as well. And so it started off with these like activation practices, which were kind of like pranayama. It's so interesting, like realizing how connected and similar our indigenous cultures are. Like in Ayurveda, in yoga, we have these practices, but then these indigenous cultures, like in Costa Rica, tribes in Costa Rica, tribes in Guatemala, in Africa, we do similar things. Like we were all people of the land. And I do believe there's so much wisdom in nature, and there's, our ancient cultures held so much knowledge, and we've forgotten a lot of it. And being able to reconnect to some of those practices in a meaningful way, in a way that's like authentic, to me is really important. I think there's lots of efforts, there's lots of people in wellness who are bringing forth different practices, and it's really good. But I also think really, and I believe really strongly about like doing them authentically. Obviously we need to adapt for modern times, but making things, how do I say this? Offering things with honor and respect and sacredness, as opposed to just like commercializing so many things, as we've seen with so many things. And it's a double-edged sword, because I think it's beautiful that there's so many people who are practicing, for example, yoga, and have an awareness of it. And I think it's so good. But then sometimes there's spaces that are calling themselves yoga, but it isn't. And that sometimes pains me, because I feel like I've shown up for something with, a certain idea or intention, and it's not that. And, I can't solve it in one YouTube video. And it's definitely something I think a lot about. And I feel like I want to share a little bit about it too, is on the side of, whoever you show up with to practice with, whether it's yoga, whether it's your massage therapist, if you have a Reiki person, a shaman, a therapist, even a just a fitness trainer, that you feel aligned to their energy, and you feel aligned to what they're sharing, and you feel that they are honoring best the knowledge that they have received and sharing it in the best way, and are honoring you and are respectful of you. And especially if you have a coach, you know, that's also really, really important. So alignment really matters. Don't go with popularity. Don't go with, you know, numbers on social media. Yes, that can be a reflection of credibility, but it can also just be a random popularity contest. So, sorry, that was a bit of a divergence. I didn't expect to get into that, but I'm glad I shared it because it is something I think is really important. Yeah, going back to the women's ritual that I did. So it started off with these activation exercises. You know, she encouraged us to look up here at our pineal gland. I'm like, this is our third eye, you know, this is what we do in yoga. And like some of the breathing techniques she was showing, I was like, I'm sure these are kriyas in yoga, just maybe some kriyas that I haven't seen. And some of them I was like, I've done this in yoga, you know, where you have like your legs in supta, in Baddha Konasana, and you're like flapping your legs in butterfly pose and stuff like that. So there were some practices like that. For several minutes, she did a body massage with these oils, which if you saw it in my last video, I think I went on about how like they felt like Ayurvedic oils, because it was like the base was coconut and there was all these herbs, and I'm sure there was like neem and all this stuff in there. So it was like very familiar. And I believe she may have done some energy work. I'm not sure. I know other people who had a massage by her were like, oh my God, I could feel the energy work. But I don't know that I felt that. But also that day, a lot happened because I also did a group Yoni steam. So, you know, obviously like after that whole day, you know, a lot went on. So I don't know if I can isolate all of that. That was really beautiful. It was a great body massage. Loved that. And also reminded me of Ayurveda. And Ayurveda, you know, in Panchakarma, massage is a really big part of it, right? Like releasing the muscles and like with oils and penetrating down deep into the tissue. So yeah, that was a beautiful part of the ceremony. There was also this like herbal bath with different herbs. I don't know what all was in that. And it was done outdoors, which was interesting. Obviously it was like protected or whatever, but that was like an interesting experience of like literally being in nature, you know, like just being in nature and receiving. And, you know, she used this, I'm gonna forget what it was, but it was like some type of horn to pour the water, and like, you know, you get rinsed and washed. And then afterwards she did this like abdominal massage. And I mean abdominal, like, I don't want you to think something else. But yeah, it was an abdominal massage that was pretty deep. And I mean, it hurt. I mean, I think you don't realize like how much tension you hold in your abdomen and like in your uterus and all of that. It was not an internal massage, but it was hard. And it was really interesting because I noticed like I was resisting a lot. Like I just like wasn't, I realized I had to like relax. And it's just so interesting, like in the experience of being a woman, how much we are like clenched up. And that's been something I've noticed over a course of a lot of the different ceremonies I've done here, is like how much I'm like this, and how beautiful it is to acknowledge that and see that and know that now so that I can change that, but to constantly notice how much I'm holding tight, and how that doesn't serve us. Like it really doesn't. And yeah, and I remember afterwards being like, oh, like, you know, I knew I felt a little bit lighter. I felt lighter afterwards. I definitely felt lighter because I was told not to eat breakfast that day, and then not to eat lunch because I was doing the women's collective Yoni steaming. So I think I had like a coconut water that day, and it was like the best coconut water I've had like ever in my life. It was so good. It was like sweet and perfect and refreshing and hydrating. And what I did notice after that session were there were things that I guess were on my mind that I suddenly had a perspective shift on them. Like, I just realized I'd been thinking about something in one particular way and feeling really anxious about it. And then with like just having gone through that ceremony, realizing, wait, like, that's not true. And I'm seeing this, I was seeing it from like an anxious, tight point of view, and then seeing it with like more openness, more love. It was like it was more like objective. It was like, wait, like, this opportunity exists for me. Like, why am I stressed about it? Like, all of the signs are there. In due time, it'll be there. Like, chill. So yeah, that was something I immediately noticed after the one-on-one. And it was called like a womb ceremony. Womb ritual. One-on-one womb ritual. And then after that, I got to participate in a Yoni steam, and this was a collective Yoni steam. So there were a bunch of other women. So these women were part of another retreat that was happening here, a group retreat. I just came to Peace Retreat as a solo person. And they happened to be having this ceremony, and they graciously also invited me. They could have excluded me, and they didn't, which I'm very grateful for. And the altar for this ceremony was really beautiful. It had this picture of a goddess or woman, and then there were different plants that were taken. There was neem, there was hibiscus, there was also tobacco. There were a few other things all set up. And I had heard of Yoni steaming, but I'd never experienced it. I also thought it sounded a little bit, I was like, I don't know what this is, you know? And what she explained, this medicine woman explained, is that women for generations, for years, we have had these practices, and this is across cultures. We've had these types of practices for our yoni, for ourselves, to rejuvenate ourselves, to heal ourselves. And we've forgotten all of these. We are living in times where we're just go, 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 everything's so commercial, you know, superficial. And these practices are intended to help the flow of prana. You know, our yoni is a portal. It's a portal that helps channel energy up. If you think about the chakra system, it starts from the base. And for many reasons, you know, it can be just for maintenance. But women also go through a lot, right? Like, there's pregnancy, there's miscarriage, there's lots of women's conditions, whether it's endometriosis, you name it. There's a whole list. You guys know better, based on your personal experiences, infections, all of that. And these practices are there for us to use. They're basic practices, not medicines, not talking therapy, things that we can use to revitalize ourselves. And so she was really emphasizing this point that these are sort of things that we as women need to reclaim. And I found it to be a really beautiful, beautiful ceremony. So just continuing on with what the ceremony was like, I have a few notes because I am that type of person. How did it start? It started with a dry steam. So there was, okay, so basically you show up, you were in like a circle, you all have like your own yoga mat, and there's these like yoni steam stools. It's like a stool with like a hole in it, and there's like a bowl. There were all these blankets and everything, so you could be comfortable, and you're told to arrive you know, in a sarong, you know, so that you're open. So it first started with this like dry steam. So she had these like coals with, on top of it she had tobacco and Mahua. And so tobacco, I think we think of tobacco, we think of like cigarette smoking tobacco. And actually in Costa Rica and in a lot of indigenous cultures, tobacco is seen as like a very spiritual herb. It's not really seen as a drug. It like has a very strong connection to the spirit world. And so that was one of the herbs that was part of it. And then Mahua, which I was really surprised because I had only ever heard of Mahua in tribal regions in India, like North India. And a friend of mine actually has a company called Sohrai, I'll just plug her, in India, where they use natural Mahua in a lot of their products. So they have lip balm, which I'm actually wearing right now, face cleansers, a few other things. And they're all based on Mahua, which is supposed to be this super seed. Think of, argan and all these other types of seeds that have so many benefits to it. But apparently Mahua also grows in parts of Africa. So I guess that this was part of the dry steam. So it started with that. Then we did these breathing techniques, these kriyas and stuff. So these are slightly, some were similar and some were different than what we did in the one-on-one session. And we do this for quite some time, and you focus on your pineal gland, and that's part of like the activating. Then we all had a chance to choose which herb we felt we connected with. So there were 3 options. There was neem, and neem has the properties of being antibacterial, antiseptic. It's a very strong herb. If you read up on neem, it can do many things, but some of them actually can be harmful if you take it in too high doses. It also has anti-cancer properties. So for people with, like, for example, endometriosis or anything kind of like going on, that could be an option. Obviously, we all had the chance to choose. Hibiscus was also an option, and that is also good for a lot of like women's conditions. And hibiscus has properties in like so many cultures. I mean, when I lived in London, there's a whole bunch of Middle Eastern stores near where I lived, and like I used to love going and like scouring the spice racks, and like I discovered hibiscus, like dried hibiscus flowers, and then I started reading up on the benefits of hibiscus. So I'd start to drink like hibiscus tea. I think I used it in like hibiscus hair wash and stuff like that. So yeah, hibiscus has a lot of benefits if you even look at Middle Eastern cultures. But the benefit of hibiscus in this ceremony was it was more of a nourishing herb versus the neem, which was more cleansing. And then tobacco was offered to be more of something that provided clarity. And then she also said it can also be seen as orgasmic. Not in like, I mean, you can take it in a sexual way, but I think it also meant orgasmic in like in a joy, in an energy filling way. And then we had the chance to all set an intention for this practice, which I thought was like, I mean, going into anything with intention, with sankalpa in yoga is so important, because as soon as you have a sankalpa, as soon as you have an intention, it makes it so much more powerful. So we went into this with an individual intention, and she also gave us an opportunity to share with the group, the other women, if we wanted to share what our intention was out of this practice. And in doing so, when we got into the steam, we could not only focus on our own intention, but we could also send love to that other person, that their intention may come true. And I thought that was beautiful. It was so beautiful because, not everyone opened up, but a few of us did, and some of the stuff that people shared was so intimate and so vulnerable and so brave. And I mean, I didn't know these women well. They were not, I wasn't on retreat with them. I was just at the same retreat center as them. And, I did have some meals with them and some yoga with them. And, they invited me to one of their breathwork sessions, which again, I feel so wonderful that they invited me to. But, just those opportunities to just open up and share what's really going on, and you know, was really beautiful. And I shared my intention. I don't know if I'll share on this video right now, but I did share my intention, and it was really beautiful. One of the girls came and just like gave me a big hug, and yeah, just being in community with women, with, it doesn't have to be women, obviously this is women centric, but I just mean in general, when we're in community and when we share and when we're honest and vulnerable, and then working through those things individually but collectively is so special. So then it got into the steam itself. Like I said, we all chose our own. We basically, you put the herbs in your bowl, they come around with hot water, you sit in it, you sit on this like bench, you sit over it. Obviously your sarong is open, but you're covered up. It's not like, you know, free for all. And yeah, you sit with it. And she was, I believe she was like, she had some like drums and music. I think she was like singing some chants. And what was really interesting was at the same time, two things happened. One, because we're in the Costa Rican jungle and it's the winter, it started raining, and it started raining at like the perfect time, where I just feel like it was like sort of like, I don't know, like a cleansing, or like this like background behind us, nature supporting us in this ceremony. And then also, because the women, we were having our ceremony, all the men, they were having a men's ceremony, a men's drum circle. And when they were drumming, it honestly felt, I mean, this is how I felt. I know a few other people felt this way too. It felt like that men's drumming, that men's circle was like, they were supporting us. It was like we were doing these divine feminine practices, and the divine masculine on the side in the background was supporting us. And they weren't anywhere near, you know, they were told don't come anywhere near us, and they stayed away. But the drumming was going on, the rain was happening, there was like then there was like some, I think some drums and some music happening in our session. I can't exactly remember, because you're also with it, because you're told to breathe in a certain way, and you're trying to like literally like bring up the steam up through you. And so that literally requires you to like open and contract, open and I don't want to say inhale and exhale, but like to open and contract and like allow that steam to come in, and work with your intention and focus on your pineal gland. And when you're focusing really hard, and then sometimes you're focusing on others. And yeah, there were 3 rounds. 2 rounds we all did together, and the 3rd round we had the option of, you could either do another round of it, or you could come down to lie down. And I decided to lie down, because I was like, this has been a lot, and I had done a lot in the day, and obviously I hadn't eaten anything all day, so it was, you know, it took a lot of energy out of me. And I guess speaking about energy, this just reminds me, one of the things the medicine woman had said is that, like, you know, as women, we naturally have these like intuitive powers, these natural powers. Our energy is of a certain vibration, but in today's world, we're so disconnected from that. Our energy is duller. And so when we do these practices, we are elevating our energy. You know, we spend so much time on computers and phones and doing all these external things. We are in concrete jungles. And don't get me wrong, like I'm a city girl. I love cities. I love all that stuff. But, you know, having practices where you can come back home to yourself is so, so important. Yeah, I actually forgot. She did offer us some cacao. This wasn't like ceremonial cacao, the way you drink it, but she'd given us some cacao mixed with honey, like right before the ceremony. And that was nice. I mean, it was with honey. It was absolutely delicious. Later on, and I've done some other ceremonies, I've had the actual cacao, and I realized, oh, it's pretty bitter. It kind of tastes like coffee, actually. But I thought that, yeah, it was just an overall beautiful ceremony with so many different layers to it, so many different aspects to it. You know, in that last round, I just came down to lay down, and then the medicine woman came around and she did an abdominal massage, like a short abdominal massage on everyone. And again, it was those oils, but also I think the interesting thing is because I had an abdominal massage earlier in that day, I noticed how much more open I was the second time. Like, I was much more relaxed. I wasn't like resisting, you know. It definitely was more painful, probably because I wasn't resisting. There's probably like places in my abdomen that are like really tight. But it was beautiful. And when it was over, it was quite a long journey. I think it lasted maybe 3 hours, maybe longer. It was a pretty long ceremony. And I think what I realized, I think for me, what came up for me was this element of like just bringing in more joy into my life, bringing in more excitement instead of focusing on negative things. And I definitely felt different afterwards. I felt like so much more open. I felt so much more lighter. Like the next few days I was like, I just want to wear like loose pants. I was like, I don't even want to wear underwear. Like I just was like, it's like a free new woman afterwards. And yeah, it was like a really enriching experience, one of many, but yeah, a really, really special experience. You know, the other thing that was encouraged was like when you're in this ceremony, like allow whatever sounds and whatever to come out. And that also connects back to this it's there's a link between your yoni and your throat, and they say that these two are connected. So when one is blocked, the other is blocked. And so, you know, you're encouraged to make noises or hum. And on a very separate note, I noticed that when I do certain pranayama and do certain mantras or voice activations, I just notice how much more open I feel and how much more confident I feel. And I think it's literally because you're like, you know, your chakras are all in a line, and when you open up one of them, all the energy can just like flow. So yeah, just more to add to this conversation. I don't really know how to end this. There was so much that went into it. The other note I have here is, I guess after the ceremony, my stomach was really bloated. I guess because like it moved things around, opened things up. My stomach was like, obviously it went down after a day, but it was just a part of it. So I hope me sharing this was either interesting, informative for you, if you are considering these things, gives you additional perspectives. And yeah, if you have additional questions, just let me know. All right, see you maybe in the next video. Sending you so much love. Bye.